This is I Love Black People Radio on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, Channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to ILoveBlackPeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are.
And welcome to another edition of I Love Black People. We've been blessed and so highly favored to have an incredible sister who's been dedicated to our work, our community, the global community, and the environment that we all live in. Our good sister, amazing sister, Howard alum, Sister Kari Fulton. Welcome to I Love Black People. Okay. So welcome, good sister Kari. Please tell the audience something about you. I know so much about the wonderful work you've done over these years. Please share with us your contributions and magnanimous adventures and achievements that are just so many. Just give us a highlight.
Well, there was a Facebook post and it said, explain what you do, but explain it badly. And how I would say what I do is I run around and tell people that the sky is falling. What was that? Was that Chicken Little? Yes, I'm also kind of small, but that's another story. But yeah, that's what I work on. I work on climate justice policy research. I'm an educator and a writer, and really excited, and also work with a number of different leading organizations in this environmental sector.
I know you got to say check the weather. Look, I remember you got to hit the check the weather. That's the thing. Man. We always talking about do for self and self-determination, the collective unity of Ubuntu. Like, sister, what's check the weather all about?
Well, check the weather is my baby. That's one of my beautiful children. I have some, real life. Have a real life son who is my blessing. But also Check the Weather is a project that I've been building out along with some other colleagues for a while now. We are going on 11 years on and off. It's like one of those relationships, but it's really about it's really a labor of love and continued growth. And what the purpose of Check the Weather is that people who care about the future check the weather. And that's what we are. We are here to forecast the future, lay out the news, the policy, the things that you should be paying attention to. And we try and do it as smoothly as possible.
Well, on that theme, I think it's probably a good opportunity for us to kind of delve into some of the subject matter expertise that you've been dedicated to as it relates to environmental justice. I think that would be a theme of this. What would you say as far as our people checking the weather right now? What are some of the key things the Black community needs to be made aware of and help them with their context and decision-making politically as well as personally?
Well, I think what's most important is for Black people, especially, because we are here on I Love Black People. One of the key pieces is that when we talk about environmental racism, when we talk about the impact of climate change, what we see, when we even talk about the energy systems and who is leading within our energy systems, whether it's coal and oil or more clean and renewable energy forms. Black people are number one, hit first and worst. And number two, we're also less likely to be in the leading decision-making places of those fields and sectors. So when we talk about climate justice, we're talking about building a future where that's not the case. We're talking about building a regenerative economy, one that's based off of not finite resources, but building a circular economy, something where we're giving back and building up, something that really understands that The people who are at the margins, the edges, are where there's lots of abundance, where we have lots of ideas that are important, lots of creativity. It's not always at the top up. And when we make sure that we know that all of the people who need to be in the decision-making table are not only at the decision-making table, but they're also the ones that are changing the narrative. They're also the ones who are deciding what this looks like and what these investments will look like for the next 140 years. That's what we're laying out here when we talk about climate justice. Now, environmental justice is kind of like the grandfather of climate justice, because that was a response, especially to centuries of where they place environmental toxins and hazards, how we're treated as people of color, in particular Black people, Indigenous people here, not only in the United States of America, but globally, by a dominating force that doesn't want us to live in many cases. So when we talk about things like Black Lives Matter, we're talking about not only our lives, but where we live our lives at. So if you want to talk about somebody attacking you, the best way they can do that is through their infrastructure, through your water systems. And that's not a hyperbole. That's not me talking rhetoric that might get me closer to something with a a different stance. This is fact, and this is what we're fighting against. And right now is a critical time because we have policy that's moving through our current administration. Is it perfect? No, but it is the first in a long time where we're making action items towards things that we need, like removing lead pipes and replacing them. Like the infrastructure projects, where are they going to build those bridges? Where are they going to do the projects that need fixing? Where are they going to install the chargers for electric vehicles? All of these things are critical and important. And if we're not at the table, if we're not fighting to make sure that our counties, our communities, our hood suburbs, wherever we're at, are represented in these conversations, we will be left out of that table. And that opportunity may not come again for 50, 60 years.
Now, are you talking about the infrastructure bill that passed, or what are some of the, I think, the priority or key legislation would you say that's passed, or that we need to be actively making sure that is getting administered or distributed equitably for our Black communities?
So the infrastructure bill the infrastructure law is a part of it, right? That's going to do a lot to bring broadband to our communities. It's going to do stuff around infrastructure. And so the actual piece that I'm talking about, Justice 40, came out of an executive order, 14008.
Whoa. You said Justice 40. Now, I don't even, I'm a lay person. I'm your HU fan. I appreciate all the work you've done for I Love Black People before we was on the scene, before we had radio shows, before
I drove the
all
bus.
Over. I just want you to know, if I ain't said, I thank you. I had 1,000, right? Not only drove the bus, you copywrote, you actually did a lot to contribute to what we built as a platform. And I just want to give you the holla shout out. But I don't know what 40, say that again and break it down so everybody else gets it.
Critical. And I appreciate that. Those jargon alerts are key and critical because we want to make sure that this information gets to the folk. So breaking this down, in January of 2021, one of the first things that Joe Biden did as soon as he got sworn into office was he started making executive orders around climate change. So he passed an executive order called Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad. Executive Order 14008. For all y'all who want to go and check it out, Google it, go ahead. Now, as part of this executive order, they have a program that was created called Justice 40. And under Justice 40, for at least 40% of all benefits from investments in climate and clean energy, whether that's mitigation or infrastructure, preparing for climate change, all of that, has to go to disadvantaged communities. Now, right now, they're in the process of saying, what does that even mean? How do we define disadvantaged communities? How do we find them wherever they are? And how do the different agencies that are under the purview of the administration, how do they execute that? How does Department of Justice look at environmental justice? How does housing? What does it mean to make sure that we're getting rid of lead and mold and all kinds of ugly things in public housing? How does this impact, not only just housing, Department of Energy? All of these things come with different block grants. There's going to be community block grants. There are going to be grants that are given to states. There are going to be grants that are going to be given to counties. Many of this is going to go to existing programs like LIHEAP. If you ever needed to go get some support because you didn't pay your light bill, LIHEAP. Y'all know about LIHEAP. Or, that's the thing that gives energy assistance. It's going into that. It's going into programs like the Diesel Emissions and Reduction Act, helping to transform our school buses into electric school buses. I'm sure Miss Frizzle will be proud. That's a part of that process. It's going into lead pipe removal. It means getting rid of these old nasty lead pipes like we saw in Flint and in Baltimore and replacing them with clean ones, So all of these different pieces are key and critical, but an executive order is a vision in many cases if it doesn't get implemented. Then from implementation, what does it look like on the state and local level? So I've been telling a lot of people and raising that horn because states across the country, you have oversight bills coming out of California where they're saying, hold up, you talking about a whole bunch of money coming down. How do we make sure that it comes to the people who need it most? And also, how do we ensure that funding not only goes to the people who need it most, but also that when they say things like the benefits of investments, that's a semantical term that can really mess folk up. Because instead we want to say, instead of just saying the benefits of investments, because someone could say, hey, we put a scrubber on a smokestack at our coal-fired power plant, right? And so that eventually will support cleaner air for this community down the street, maybe. But is that a direct investment in that community? Some would argue no. Some would argue maybe not. So when we look at these really specific terms, you have great organizations like Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy that are gathering together lawyers, Black lawyers, and saying, hey, let's talk about this. Let's get into the legalese because this is,
Okay, I that example, which I think was great because we need examples, but I didn't understand the scrubber thing. I don't even know what a scrubber is, and so no. I think it was wonderful because you were talking about coal, and I think all of us know coal is dirty. Coal. So black coal. I hope that's not us saying black is dirty, but black coal is dirty. We know that's dirty, and there's a company using coal, and now they have a scrubber. Is that a benefit? Is that how you bringing it back? And do we have to say no? It's not because y'all shouldn't even have the coal going. Like, give me because I think you made a good point about benefits and how people try to play these power tricks on us. Help us deconstruct that a little bit more.
So this is a very interesting dynamic that's continuing to grow. And I'm sure that there are some people who work within the coal industry who have lots that they want to talk about it. United Mine Workers is a definite group if you want to learn more about what's going on with the union members. But as we're talking about the idea of scrubbers, it's around the idea of, hey, with coal, coal is a legacy energy source. We have a somewhat abundant yet finite amount here in the United States. It also emits a lot of carbon into the world. And it's very toxic to the people who have to work in that industry, right? It's also bad for the environment. You see things like surface mining, and you see things where you have people who are really digging and doing a lot that damages our environment. So there have been these ideas that maybe we can still use coal if we just make it cleaner, right? Maybe we'll like put some things in the smokestack that will help to capture some of the carbon. And so instead of it just going out all willy-nilly, it's stored somewhere, right? And so you have things like carbon capture, use, and storage, and where people say things, you might have heard this term maybe like 12 years ago, the clean coal, right? That idea that coal can be clean. And if we can just do that, right? And that's what we call a false solution of one of many, where we're saying, yes, we need to reduce the amount of carbon that we emit. You know, globally, the United States is one of the largest emitters in the world, right? And that impacts everybody, especially the small island nations, especially our brothers and sisters in Africa and the global South. You know, our actions impact the rest of the world. So we do want to reduce those emissions. But when you have investments that don't go to the real solutions, like, you know, increasing infrastructure, building up community solar, you know, building out energy democracies where everyone can take advantage and has a stake in how our energy is used and what type of energy is used. If we're not building that, then we're just building the same old thing, but putting it in a green tent. We got Elon Musk throwing trash in the sky. Bless his heart. But is that the future that we want? We got to really talk about that. And we have the opportunity right now. And oftentimes people don't realize how close we are to changing the future if we just take a little moment.
Now, is the environmental justice, is that the same as the folks who are telling us that we got global warming, or is that different?
So environmental justice is a little different than the folk who are telling you about global warming, right?
Oh, no. Okay.
So it's all in a way connected, but we want to definitely focus in on those terminologies. Environmental justice, whether you believe in climate justice, you know, whether you believe in climate change or not, whether you believe in the origins of it or not, you do know that historically, Black communities, indigenous communities, you know, communities who are marginalized have also been placed in areas where you have lots of polluting industries, whether that's a landfill or, you know, broken apart because we're building a highway or not getting quality support from the different agencies, you know, or not being able to get on those environmental boards so that you can play a role in how the regulations are made. So environmental racism is something that we know exists because we live in it every single day. We don't have to ask about the science. We know how people are moving. So when we talk about the idea of environmental justice, we're talking about how racism has impacted where we live and where we are, how capitalism, you know, everybody don't want to hear that. But the way that we build our structures, somebody has to be at the bottom and they're not going to live in a place that's clean. And that is not what we want.
Capitalism is dirty. We can say it. Capitalism is dirty. Bad capitalism, bad capitalism. We're clear that this thing is 500 years of it ain't worked right. So I think your point being made with environmental justice is in contrast to the global warming movement. What would you say then is the most, like, the big priority for 2022 or the near future with all these things that you're talking about? You know, what are the steps? What are the things that people should be watching out for, being involved in, that could be critical in priority?
Well, there's a few different things. One, of course, at all times, it's important to build local community power, you know, whether it's joining an organization in your local community, staying abreast to the registrar and when these public comment periods are happening, We need more citizen scientists. We have whole areas that are changing because a group of parents got together and tested playground equipment and found high lead levels. So it doesn't take a bunch of people in suits and degrees and all these things. It's helpful, but you can do it too, and people are doing it all over the country. So we have to pay attention to that, along with ensuring that we are building out and not thinking about the loss. A lot of people are already planning for a loss. And a lot of it is saying, oh, well, the Democrats.
You said building up for a loss. Loss in what?
So when I talk about a loss, I'm, of course,
you're talking about wages. You're talking about politics.
Not even just wages, but yeah, I'm talking about people are building up in that too. People are already speculating on a loss, whether it's moving into a recession or a transition in politics back to a conservative base that doesn't believe in climate change and doesn't really care about environmental justice. So people are already thinking about the loss, but are we really preparing for what that means if we do not actually get these victories? Now, there's also the reality that people will say is that they're all bad, right? That all politics are bad. I would say that all politics are bad if you're not playing in them. If you are letting people use you as the ball, you will have bad politics. And oftentimes we are told that if we should be apathetic. We are told that politics and being involved doesn't matter. We are told that there's foxes everywhere, and wolves everywhere. What we are not told is this is how the system is created. This is what's happening. And as Black people, you, in many ways, it doesn't, if we know that it doesn't matter who's in office, it also, for our harm, if that's what people believe, then it also means that we have to get actively acquainted with figuring out ways to either change the system or live a life regardless of the system. Now, what that looks like?
Yeah, you got to break those two down. That was very interesting. Give me those choices.
If we're talking about anticipating a loss, what does that actually mean? When we're talking to foundations or donors and people are saying, hey, what should I donate to? Well, if we're going to lose, if the Democrats lose, for good or worse, then that means that certain other policies that are dominant within another party are going to get implemented. So what does that actually mean for the communities that we serve? Does that mean that we're going to have to spend more on immigration law? Making sure that our folk are safe. Does this mean that we're going to have to focus more on state level policy? Maybe that means pushing more ballot initiatives rather than focusing on federal policy. Does it mean that we're going to have to prepare for job loss? Because all of these jobs that are coming into the federal government may be lost because conservative governments tend to have more conservative hiring when it comes to the federal government. So there's a long list of different things that we have to prepare for, because oftentimes, especially in the DMV area where we live, and we saw that with the government shutdowns, so many of our folk, our workforce, work within the federal government.
Well, you were speaking to the fact that if you didn't vote and you think there's a problem with politicians and politics, what do you tell that person? Like, the preparation, how do you prepare? I know you're not telling people not to vote, or to vote. I mean, I think you're just presenting the information.
Now, that being said, in full disclosure, It means looking at the realities of what it means to be prepared. What does it mean? Do you have $400 in savings at least in case of a natural disaster? Now, these are things that need to happen regardless of who's in office. We know that, one, we have 10-year. If you are reading the science, if you're looking at the reports that are coming out around climate change, you know that it's just getting worse. And the politicians are moving slower than molasses on Sunday.
Like, thank you, sister. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I Love Black People is a critical resource as we continue to grow. We need to make sure that we're safe wherever we're at. As you say, it's all in Ubuntu.
In Ubuntu. So with that being said, I am because we are, and I definitely wouldn't be me without you, Sister Kari. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a great one.
This is I Love Black People Radio on HUR Voices, Sirius XM, channel 141. I Love Black People is more than a radio show. I Love Black People is a call from our ancestors to protect us from racial profiling all across the world. Go to ILoveBlackPeople.com and become a member today. Membership empowers you to live fearlessly and protect Black people globally from racism and xenophobia. Join us today and become a member of our global network with an online global green book with Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses to protect you and your community. Membership is free, and with you, we will become 10 million strong worldwide. I am because we are. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.